Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Season 3 of the Rule 34 podcast. I'm your host, Jack, joined by my fellow guests.
It's Mr. Solis.
Alright, we are back, sir, after the last time we met was Extreme Rules. How have you been since then?
I've been fine. We are 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving, about 5 weeks away from the end of the semester. I'll tell you the one nagging thing is this cracked tooth I have.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's becoming a little harder and harder to ignore.
Oof. Definitely sounds tough.
Been collecting dentist names and numbers and shopping around. Maybe that be my Christmas present to myself this year. Luckily, it's a back tooth, so no one can see it, and it's a little friend that tells me sometimes that he's there. How about you, Jack? How are you?
So far doing good. Funny enough, right now, as we were talking before we started recording, you knew I was eating a little snack. Sadly, I dropped the other half of my bagel.
Oh, no!
We will be recording these episodes, potentially if there's two. I will be very hungry.
Got it. You and me both. I've got a snack waiting for me when we're done as well.
But other than that, I've been doing pretty good. And before we get into the event, to kind of catch people up on something I brought up to Mr. Solis beforehand, and it could potentially turn into an episode, because I know it'll be an episode on the main line because of the two people involved there. But
right.
Though we've already covered their events, you can truly say that the Rule 34 podcast is hashtag all elite now, because we will be going to the AEW event at the Kia Forum in Los Angeles come January 11th, I believe it is. Or I believe it is the 11th, correct. It'll be Mr. Solis, myself, my brother, and Dom and Gio will be going as well. And I don't know about you, sir, but for the rest of us, my brother, myself, and Gio and Dom, this will be a first-time experience going to our first ever wrestling show at all.
It's going to be wild, Jack. I've been to more than a few, and I'm excited for you guys and to be able to talk to you all about the experience. Jack, not only are we going to see a Dynamite, we're probably going to see a dark elevation taped as well.
Yeah, and I don't know how things are going to change by that point, but at the current time, the ticket does say plus Rampage. So
whoa!
Rampage recently has been going live, so I don't know if that may change. Potentially it may, but if they don't, it'll be, as you said, likely they do the 1 hour before and 1 hour after the event. It will probably be, a couple dark matches, the AEW Dynamite and Rampage right after.
Jack, we're going to be there for like 4 or 5 hours.
I know, it's going to be like sitting through the old WrestleManias from the 2010s.
It really is.
I think the most part, now, obviously I'm excited to go for my first ever wrestling event after being a wrestling fan for a good portion of my life. But I guess you could say it's kind of, I don't know how to word it, but what I'm most excited for, not only my own personal experience, but getting to see Dom and Gio's experience and reaction to it all, because they're not wrestling fans. They get to see this atmosphere at an even greater portion for the first time, because all they know is the little clips they've seen, and Dom seeing the 2 or 3 events he's watched with me. He's never really seen, though, a live crowd and being a part of the live crowd.
And I'll tell you what, Jack, there's something special about being a part of that live crowd, and I've heard other people describe this. Like, you and I will talk about Crown Jewel 2022 and nitpick and tell each other what worked, what didn't sit right with you, right? We're going to critique, we're going to judge. But I honestly think that being there in that moment, you got some thick old rose-colored glasses, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget when I made that connection. Like, being there really, amps everything up no matter how dumb it is. I was there, Jack, at the Staples Center for SummerSlam when CM Punk beat John Cena to unify the titles, And Kevin Nash came out and powerbombed him. We hadn't seen Kevin Nash since that Royal Rumble. And then Alberto Del Rio came out and cashed in his money in the bank on CM Punk, right? None of that made sense, Jack. In hindsight, that story went nowhere. But the environment was electric. Everyone was on their feet, yelling at the top of their lungs, "Is that Kevin Nash?"
Yeah, and I have like a bunch of things that I'm hoping get like checked off attending an event, but the one thing I want to say to the listening audience is don't be surprised when at the end of 2023, when we're doing our top 10 matches of the year, don't be surprised if a match that happened on that card, if it's really good and I saw it in person, ends up on that list, because of the sole fact that attending in person really does amp up, how you remember.
I'm writing on my list of things to make, Jack, or find. Either make it or find it. I'm gonna find a live wrestling event bingo card.
But I've come up with a couple, but it's more so things I hope happen so that it can result in other things happening at the live event. I'm hoping the Acclaimed are booked because I want to do the scissor thing with Dom and Gio, make them do it.
Absurd. Yeah. I bet it exists, but I hear you got like a lot of really specific, hopes for the live experience, and I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely, especially because another thing too, this is just fantasy booking and having high expectations, and obviously you don't ever really want to have high expectations because you don't want to be disappointed. But this is also going to be the Dynamite after Wrestle Kingdom.
Whoa.
So potentially maybe some stories that happen at Wrestle Kingdom can carry over onto AEW. Who knows?
We got a story. We got a New Japan story happening on this show we'll get to.
Oh yeah. But let's get right into it. That's just for the listening audience to know. We will be at that event come January.
Woohoo!
I'm definitely excited to hear, again, not only see their experience, but hear what they have to say after attending an event live, because I've shown them some of the grand moments that happened, and all that, and it's even, you see it's its own little mini series on the main line of the podcast. So I hope they have a good experience there, although I know time will definitely be something that they're not going to be used to, is all that time sitting through the tapings and then the actual event and then Rampage right after if it still goes through.
Yeah.
But moving on to our main topic of today, we are back in Saudi Arabia for Crown Jewel. Trying to remember some of the stories that were leading into it, but of course, it's right there. And now, obviously, after the event, we're building towards War Games, but as usual, Saudi Arabia event placed right in the middle of two events, and this time I'm kind of glad where its placement was because it didn't interfere too much with either show that came before or after it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're planning more ahead and, creating less confusion and overlap.
Yeah, like they didn't have to worry about getting this done in time for the next event or getting this done or saving one match from a pay-per-view so it could happen here instead, They kind of built towards a lot of the matches for this specific event. And we've even been building for the main event for quite some time, as Roman wasn't at Extreme Rules to defend his title because we knew from, I believe, somewhere towards the end of September, early October, that he would be defending the title against Logan Paul at this event.
Yeah, so we've had lots of weeks of teasing, hyping, jaw-jacking. Recently, the big talking point has been that Logan Paul has injured his hand in his childhood and has pins in his hand, Jack. Metal infused in his hand, and that his punch is stronger than most because of that metal. Yeah,
so definitely a lot of interesting story points building towards here, and definitely a lot of matches to look forward to. A couple are rematches, a couple are kind of confusing booking, but for the most part, on paper, there was a lot to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
And we start that off with the starting match of the night, Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley, as Brock Lesnar made his return to cost Bobby Lashley the United States Championship.
I had to be reminded of this, Jack. Bobby Lashley beat Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman's help, right?
Yeah, at the Royal Rumble.
I just couldn't remember that. And I think it's because Brock Lesnar eventually takes the title back that I couldn't picture in my mind's eye Bobby Lashley being one up on Brock Lesnar. But that's the story they're telling here, that he's a blemish on Brock's record, which is funny because Roman's also a lot of blemishes on that record too. But he's coming to get his receipt, I guess.
Yeah, so that's sort of been the build-up.
And of course, we got Lesnar here, who's not going to stick around any longer than he has to, so he's out first.
Yeah, he's out first. Him and Bobby go at it. What were your thoughts on the overall match, sir?
I wondered how they were going to go, Lashley's looked pretty strong at the build-up to this, and what do we do at the very beginning? We spear Lesnar a couple of times outside the ring, inside the ring. He's got that, Survivor Series 2015 Goldberg approach,
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. This isn't all said and done like I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. They've really been building Lashley to be strong, and he just went straight for the offensive, and then you have Lesnar who turns the tide, going with his usual German suplexes, the F5s obviously for near counts, and then the whole kind of building point obviously with Lashley is that when he gets that hurt lock in, it's pretty much the end of the match.
I honestly didn't think he was physically possible to get the hurt lock on Brock Lesnar. I don't think we've ever seen him put it on somebody that wide.
Yeah.
But he did barely. And, again, making him look strong. He had it in for a long time.
Yeah, had it in. Basically got to the point where Lesnar was nearly unconscious. But then, he gets back up and he kicks off the ring corner to get him down to the mat. And that's when he takes somewhat of the Shayna Baszler approach, where her moves constantly countered that way, where he gets them both on the mat and uses the momentum to sort of get the advantage on Lashley and get the pin.
Yeah, a surprise pin, because was Lashley's shoulders actually on the ground? That's to be debated.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point was made. He couldn't get out of it. He, for the first time in a very long time, had to think, think creatively. And you know what he does so great, like Daniel Bryan? He's just that super white, that uber white. So when he's in the hurt lock, he's just able to make his face real pink.
Yeah.
And it's goodness. It's so wild to see the effects of this hold that's kind of choking him from behind.
Yeah, and to truly sell Lashley's dominance and for a potential third match down the line with maybe an added stipulation, after the match, Lashley, angry that he lost in such a manner, puts Lesnar in the hurt lock and only releases it when Lesnar finally becomes unconscious.
Yeah. Lesnar, can you imagine 2022 Lesnar unconscious, Lesnar down on the ground? What a world!
Not only that, down on the ground and unconscious for a man not named Roman Reigns.
Yes.
But overall, pretty good match between those two. Very quick as always. As you mentioned, Lesnar's always pretty much in and out with these events, gets his bag. And, it potentially sets up a third match, but...
it does. Oh, that's happening, yes.
Yeah. But I think people... Sorry, I was going to say, I think people are expecting it too soon than they like to think, I've seen a lot of people saying it happens here or there.
I wonder if it happens really quick, right? And then we feed Lashley to Reigns before WrestleMania. We got a surprisingly long time before WrestleMania, so who is he if he doesn't beat Logan Paul later, right? Who is he going to contend with up till WrestleMania? I just wanted to point out that Bleacher Report in their highlights for this match. The last point is it's honestly kind of impressive that Lashley was even able to lock his fingers for the hurt lock.
Yeah. He really, as you mentioned, because he's probably never had to do it on someone as wide as Lesnar, he really had to extend as much as he could, especially his fingers.
Goodness.
But we move on to our second match of the night, our first championship match of the night. Alexa Bliss and Asuka going against Damage Control's Dakota Kai and Io Sky for the Women's Tag Team Championships. But if you hadn't been paying attention to the weekly shows, you wouldn't have known that Damage Control dropped the women's tag titles to Alexa Bliss and Asuka the Monday Night Raw before this event.
True, and just before this match started, the new tag team champions of 6 days were being interviewed on their way to the ring, and Alexa Bliss is talking about how fired up she is to fight. But then what happened, Jack?
We get one of Bray Wyatt's symbols on the little TV monitor back there.
And did it appear in their entrance as well?
I think it did as well. Like it flashed for a second, kind of like how it did on the TV.
Kubbi. And how about the Damage Control logo in drones in the sky?
Oh, I know. That was pretty interesting.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. And, odd booking aside with the whole, dropping the title right before the
potatoing, right?
Yeah. The one sort of positive you can give it is that, they've been building pretty much this feud, and you also look at it sort of looking ahead. They're also building simultaneously not only the feud, especially between Bianca and Bayley and Damage Control as a whole, but we're now looking towards War Games right after this, so that's another thing they've been building to.
Hey, Jack, in the sort of like list of ways you can tell Triple H is running the show, You've often brought up War Games because it's the next event, right? Yeah. The man loves him some Black Sabbath War Pig, don't he?
Oh, I know. Immediately.
And another thing that I noticed, I feel like they only did it once, but I heard it was something that was going to change. Michael Cole on commentary announced the referee's name because they're allowed to have names again.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, for the most part, they've been changing a lot of different things. Like another thing,
the last Triple H fingerprint I'm going to call out for this match, the commentary team point out that all of the women were very successful in their time at NXT. So, Jack, we're reminding people that thing exists, and these people had lives before the main roster.
Even relaying information that these people had lives before WWE, as they mentioned that Io and Asuka used to be in a stable with Io's sister out in Japan.
Wow!
So definitely a lot of stuff changing and getting mentioned. But
goodness gracious, this is certainly the last time we're going to bring up Japan tonight.
But what are your thoughts on the match, sir?
You know what? I found myself enjoying this one more than their face team versus Damage Control match from Clash at the Castle.
Mm.
That match was, a little longer than it should have been, and this one felt just right.
Yeah, definitely, and it also is benefited by one less person on each team, meaning less worry about this person getting in and getting their chops in, and I think another thing I liked was sort of the mini elements where it's like, because they introduced that whole thing with Wyatt before the match, you're wondering, is something going to happen with Alexa where she reverts back to her old character when she was with The Fiend? Is she going to turn on Asuka or whatever? Asuka was dealing with a leg injury and selling that, throughout the match, was them targeting the leg and all that. But overall, it was a real interesting match. And then, what's it called? We get Nikki Cross interfering.
What?
And we saw her interfere on Monday Night Raw. I don't think it was that Monday Night Raw, but it was one of the Monday Night Raws where she kind of returned, and I think she attacked Bianca, if I remember correctly.
She attacked Bianca and Bayley.
Yeah, but now
sort of not aligning herself to either one, just sort of being crazy Nikki.
Yeah, until finally we kind of see that final sort of allegiance, or we see it in the Raw after, but here she kind of shows even more sort of allegiance when she kind of lays out Alexa Bliss and allows Dakota Kai to get the pin.
Correct.
And that's another interesting story element that just came to my mind. She attacked her former tag team partner in Alexa Bliss.
She did.
So definitely a lot of story elements in this match.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Damage Control wins and gets the belt back. Kind of confusing, as we mentioned earlier, with the whole hot potatoing of the belt. Something that's.
I mean, I think, like, you know, like, assuming the best of intentions, I guess what it kind of, like, does is establish Alexa and Asuka are as formidable a team as Dakota and Io. You know what I mean? Like, they're very evenly matched, that they keep beating one another like this. Think of, like, how often Triple H and The Rock were trading the world title in the early 2000s. It's like, you know, I beat him, and then he beat me, and then he beat him. And, you know, that's just the way it was going.
Yeah, and especially after how much damage control has lost, you know, especially at Extreme Rules, we saw Bianca fend them off 1-on-3 to kind of...
And, like, all of them have been in other tag teams, so you're like, okay, maybe that's a transferable skill with different partners. You know what I didn't bring up? I feel like Asuka and Alexa had more than one, like, tandem maneuver.
Yeah.
You know, like a setup and, you know, the other one does the other move.
Yeah, they were doing a lot of that.
I feel like I was impressed by more than one of those this match, and I wish I'd written it down.
Yeah. And I don't know, I've seen, like, a lot of people's complaints about, you know, Damage Control, how they've sort of been booked and all that, and if this trio is really working well together. But I guess after War Games will be the true test, because, you know, I think, I don't know, I think the main issue that people probably had is that there wasn't enough time not really established for Damage Control, but, like, you know, they were thrown directly into everything right away without sort of a build-up or sort of explanation, you know, or given time to really mesh well with one another. Like, you know, Io and Dakota are just now really getting good synergy as a tag team.
Yeah, like what damage are they controlling?
Yeah,
you know. It's a lot like Saraya on AEW, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the sense that she came and she said very explicitly, I'm here to, like, shake up the women's division. You're like, but how, though? With promos? You know, so you're like, Damage Control. We've been wrestling the same 3 women for the last 2 months. And you're like, okay. Damage Control. Something or other.
Yeah.
The wrestling's good. The motivation, still unclear.
Still needs its work. But we move on to another match that, you know, is not only a rematch, but it's had story behind it. There's sort of a reason behind why this stipulation is being added to the match in the rematch. We have Drew McIntyre facing off against Karrion Kross, this time in a steel cage match.
Yeah, to sort of hold Scarlett at bay from interfering, the Jezebel. What'd you think of this match, sir?
I kind of have to agree with what a lot of other people were saying, and that was that though certain moments didn't flow well throughout the match, when they were going at it, it was very hard hitting between both men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like this is the second match of the night, Brock and Lashley being the first, where we got 2 big old men clashing, big meaty men clashing.
Yeah, you know, there was a ton of just hard-hitting moments. I think people will always sort of have unfair expectations of cage matches when it comes to the steel cage itself. Because, you know, with WWE, you're not going to see any blood. And I think the main complaint people have is the whole you can escape to win sort of manner, which is weird because, you know, if you want a match where the whole point isn't to escape, then that's what Hell in a Cell is for. This one, the escape option is there many times to give the heel a sneaky way out of winning the match,
Yeah, or how about that JBL Big Show barbed wire steel cage match that they had in 2006?
Yeah, so
JBL snuck in through underneath the ring.
Yeah.
Hey, Bleacher Report here, one of his notable moments was some of the punches Cross and McIntyre were throwing were connecting more than the average pro wrestling strike. It brought a little brutality to the fight.
Yeah, definitely very hard hitting between these two men. And then, you saw them trading finishers at one point where McIntyre, what did he do? I think he hit the Future Shock DT, but he didn't get the Claymore off. And then that's when Cross hit him with the elbow and tried climbing the cage. And then you get the point where McIntyre tries to escape, but that's when Scarlett maces him again and then locks the door.
And she maces a ref this time.
Yeah.
And locks the door.
Yeah. And then, you get both men kind of struggling to get out until finally McIntyre hits him with the Claymore, but since the door is locked, he instead goes to climb the cage, and as Scarlett realizes that Drew's getting more and more close to winning, that's when she tries to go and unlock the door. She finally gets it, but it's too late of time as Drew exits the cage first and wins the match before Cross could even crawl out, even halfway through the door.
I like it because it shows an over-reliance on Scarlett, and that was his downfall. So if he had done this on himself, by himself, no one would have locked the door like that. And he could have snuck out quicker, but because she's wrestling with the key, and I thought that was really good. The pressure. He doesn't win. Drew does.
Yeah, and much like Lashley and Lesnar, it could potentially lead to a third match, but I feel like
it's true. And you know what? This was a way of how do you beat Cross without making him look weak? What do you think of Scarlett and all the interference, Jack?
I think how you were putting it, it's sort of a good way to build a sort of story that, I really don't know, because at some point you feel obviously she adds to the whole sort of presentation of Cross, but then it's it sort of builds the story at times that sometimes your interference is key, at Extreme Rules, and other times, here, it can be, it can hinder Cross's performance. And I don't know, I think maybe you can get an interesting story out of that.
I always think of your dad, just because, carrying Cross, a man in the peak of his prime of his physical, peak, and he's got his wife, helping him win matches, and it's I hate that so much, boo you, and they get him booing. How do you make people boo in 2022, right? I thought it was absolutely absurd, Jack. She jumps on the ring apron to distract Drew. She's behind the cage, and he turns around to look at her. What you doing, Drew? What's the point of the cage if you're gonna turn your back on Cross like that?
Yeah.
She's out there just yelling at him. And he's like, "What you doing?" And I'm like, "What are you doing? Falling for this again?"
Yeah, definitely funny, but I definitely. It's always funny to see my dad's reactions to a lot of the heel antics from the heels.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of female antics. We move on to a feud that's been built around the fact that one group has a female causing havoc and the other doesn't have a female to sort of give the other team's female comeuppance. We have the OC, AJ Styles with the returning Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows facing off against the Judgment Day and Finn Balor, Damian Priest, and Dominic Mysterio. And I say returning because in between Extreme Rules and Crown Jewel, between our recordings, the Good Brothers return to WWE.
How much time we have, Jack?
15 minutes.
Oh, good. Oh, boy. Jack, what's Carl Anderson doing here? I couldn't help but think that he should be in Japan, defending the never open weight championship he held a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, very, very odd stuff because we came to learn that they were never really like on contract or even really like a. I mean, it's technically like a date by date sort of contract where they get booked for this event. That's when they show up. They get paid for it, not like a full guaranteed contract. So
Yeah.
it is odd to put a title on a guy like that. But then also like the confusing part was like, why wouldn't like because we've seen this sort of before with some talents where it's like they were champion of promotion, they signed with WWE, and they either vacated right away or because they had already dates that they needed to fulfill because they were already like set in stone. WWE has allowed them to continue it. Like back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019, Toni Storm was actually a champion out in Stardom. And not only because was she in NXT UK, but she was also allowed to continue the Stardom stuff because it was dates that needed to be fulfilled on her already previous contract before she went and signed with WWE.
So, what a tangled web we weave, and it's got people wondering because he's vacated the title. They had I don't think they had a match to determine a new champion yet. But it was all done in such a way as it's hard to tell what's real and what's storyline. You know what I mean, brother?
Yeah.
So I wonder if Carl Anderson don't drop that title officially at Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah.
That's the old JOB in January.
Yeah, because New Japan came out and said that, you know, much like every other case that they've had, any champion who can't fulfill their scheduled match automatically vacates the title. But then you have Carl Anderson saying, "No, I'm not vacating the title. I'm still champion."
Yeah, he's pulling like an old Juice Robinson. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to give you the belt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see if anything comes of this, but it's exciting, Jack, because Jack, I hate to derail us even more, but you got to teach me how to watch Noah because the Great Muta is going to fight Shinsuke Nakamura in January.
Yeah, I saw that too. And apparently also for his final match, I think he's fighting Sting, I believe.
But or is Sting going to partner with them against somebody?
Yeah, I think that's the more likely option because though Sting has been having some crazy matches in AEW at his age, I don't think you necessarily want to put him one-on-one with another guy his age. Sting's been good because he's been in team.
You're going to have to help me navigate the international streaming services so that I can see Shinsuke Nakamura versus the Great Muta. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, definitely a lot of stuff that people are sort of confused on because some people obviously they have their right to be skeptical and be like, no, it's a WWE. We know they don't work with other companies. And, you know, but then we have situations like this where it's like you said, it's difficult to really tell what's going on with the Carl Anderson situation. It was crazy to see that the Great Muta was able to get WWE to allow Shinsuke Nakamura to fight him in January next year. So definitely a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to outside companies and them getting to work with WWE. I personally don't think it's likely, but at the same time, we've seen crazier things happen.
We certainly have. Hey, I've seen a crazy thing happen recently. The Judgment Day looks strong. Remember in August when we were talking about what you're doing with this group? It looked pretty good. You know, the presentation, the augmented reality stuff, like the looming hooded figures. There's 4 of them, Jack, 1 for each member, and they looked real strong here. Get this. Michael Cole on commentary actually referred to AJ and Finn Balor as former members and founding members of the Bullet Club.
Yeah, very surprising stuff, like I said. Very crazy to see that they're finally acknowledging stuff. And people are going to say, oh, we've heard them acknowledge stuff before, but like, for the most part, where did that happen? Down in NXT, where we heard about people being former champions in Stardom, in New Japan, you know. That's where we heard about it, not on the main roster.
Any part of this match, Jack, that stood out to you?
Let me think. Because there were some things that stood out, obviously. But being a six-man match, I usually always kind of struggle to remember because things happen so quickly a lot of the times. But like you mentioned, Judgment Day has been looking pretty strong lately, you know? Mm-hmm. And they obviously get the advantage in most of this match, and especially because, like I mentioned at the start of it, Rhea Ripley's involved, and she's the one that's constantly causing trouble for the opposing teams, and they can't do much because they don't have a female talent to sort of counterbalance her.
Because they're not going to hit her. They're gentlemen.
Yeah.
She is wearing her hair, Jack, like Beth Phoenix, in memory of Beth Phoenix, and I go, please don't do that, because what does that mean, Jack? What does it mean when she's wearing her hair like Beth Phoenix?
Yeah, you never know.
You setting a matchup between them two that I ain't trying to see unless Rhea Ripley's gonna beat her.
Yeah,
and I think a part of the match that like I really enjoyed, Jack, was the hot tag to Luke Gallows, who I don't understand why is walking around on like balsa wood legs. You know what I mean? Like, but like. I like when he got tagged in, so did Dominic. And Dominic is like really cowering, you know? And you remember how Luke Gallows was like bullying Toriano?
Yeah.
Like he just plays the role of the bully really well. Remember they were bullying John Cena?
Yeah.
Like I wish they played that up more. And it was just like, I'm gonna haze this scrub in front of a billion people in Saudi Arabia. That's what it really felt like to me. It was really fun.
Yeah. And then, what's it called? The funniest part, you know, we talked about some odd booking choices. Isn't it funny how before this event, the OC kept talking about how they needed or were going to get a contingency plan for Rhea Ripley, and then they show up to the event without it?
I mean, she just missed her flight. She was ready on Monday. Oh, where's Saturday? Oh, you know, had to get my passport in order. Did you see what happened on Monday?
Yeah, Mia Yim shows up to be that sort of contingency plan for Rhea Ripley, finally.
Add another face to the gauntlet meme.
And, you know, I brought it up earlier about War Games being next, and now it's like people don't really know what to sort of expect. We obviously know we're building towards a women's War Games match with the women. But on the men's side, people don't know what to expect. Are we going with the Bloodline in the War Games match? Are we going with Judgment Day and OC?
I thought of you, Jack. I thought of you when they aired that promo, because the Bloodline's in the commercial, Judgment Day's in the commercial. Who else is in the commercial? Oh, Damage Control, right? Yeah, these big groups that we were fantasy booking into it. You know, they're all in the commercial. I think, Jack, we run it like they did in the late 80s. Every match is a War Games match.
Oh, man. Definitely going to be interesting to see what the main roster's War Games match is going to be like. Because there's some pretty high expectations after all the previous ones.
Mm-hmm.
But to finish up this match, Judgment Day gets the win on the OC.
Yeah, Rhea Ripley's too much to handle. She attacks AJ Styles, which allows Finn Balor to hit the coup de grace.
Finish off that match, and we have about 5 minutes left on this episode, sir, and 3 more matches to cover.
Wonderful.
So
I think 4 matches.
4. 1, 2. Oh yes, 4. Sorry, I didn't.
We halfway through the show.
I didn't scroll far enough on my document.
And I will dedicate some amount of these 5 minutes to hear your reaction to Rhea Ripley's new shirt.
Oh, I saw that on Twitter.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so essentially paying homage to Eddie Guerrero's. Oh gosh, what? No, I'm trying to remember. It says "I'm your puppy" right now. Who's your puppy? It's "I'm your puppy."
I'm your puppy.
Yeah, so to play off of it, Rhea Ripley now has a shirt that says "I'm your mommy," and
golly,
very funny. People were saying expected to sell out right away.
Jack, when Eddie Guerrero wore that "I'm your poppy" shirt, he was getting heat for the claim he was making that he was Dominic's papi.
Yeah.
Here he is, 2 decades later. I don't know if I should feel gross about this, Jack, actually.
Oh, man. But yeah, I saw all that on the social medias. Definitely saw mixed reactions to it, but, you know, for the most part, people have seen it like how you were saying it, to play off the original shirt and how, you know, Eddie was getting heat for claiming he was Dominic's father. But it's funny to bring this shirt in now when Rey Mysterio is no longer involved in the story.
I hear you. You know what's funny about that? Like, you know, she's not egging on his biological father. She's egging on us, the audience, the fans.
But with the remaining time left, I will close here. I've been Jack, joined by my guest, Mr. Solis. We will join you all in part 2, where we cover the remaining 4 matches, which include Braun Strowman versus Omos, the Undisputed Tag Championships being defended by the Usos against the Brawling Brutes, Bayley versus Bianca for the Raw Women's Championship in a last woman standing match, and Roman Reigns defending the undisputed WWE Universal Championship against Logan Paul. We will see you all in the next episode, or in part 2.